8th grade, last day of school. Actually the only lockdown I've ever experienced. There were no classes that day, just a whole bunch of different fun activities in all the classrooms. Want to watch a movie? Go to room 453. Want to play dodgeball? Go to the gym. Different movie? Room 320. All was celebration and happiness. Suddenly administration gets word from the police department that an armed suspect was fleeing the police via car and then via foot. Right in front of our school. Lockdown was initiated. Being a pretty peaceful neighborhood, we rarely had drills on what proper lockdown procedure was. So some of the teachers got confused and apparently lost their ability to reason. I was in the gym when it happened, and I went to the nearest teacher for direction. She told me I had to go to my homeroom, which was on the other side of the school. I asked her why I couldn't just stay with her. But she insisted that I must go, now, and hurry. Scared shitless, I poked my head out of the gym exit door. Coast seemed clear. I was going to have to cross the quad, which was nice and wide and open, with only a few tiny saplings for cover. I thought, I'm gonna die. Muscling together all of my bravery, I dodged across the open space as quick as my little 13-year-old legs would take me, heart bursting out of my chest every other step, fully expecting to see a guy in a trench coat carrying a rifle round a corner at any second. Aren't imaginations great? I did not go to my homeroom, I just banged on the nearest classroom door until they let me in. I jumped in and crouched with everyone else in the darkness. A couple of the girls started crying, which actually made me feel much better cause then I could take on the protector role instead of being the victim. They're their child, it will be okay, pat pat. But long story short, nothing actually happened. The guy managed to prowl around the neighborhood for about an hour before the police caught him, and then the lockdown ended and we all got on buses to go tell our parents about the excitement. And the stupid-ass teacher who made me, a mere child then, break lockdown procedure. Shakes fist of righteous indignation. Before we continue, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. A few months ago, we had a lockdown. Keep in mind, this is a decently wealthy area, which frequently correlates to low crime rates. Nothing like this had ever happened before. Sure, we had lockdowns because there was a gas leak, or because someone spotted a mountain lion in the area. This time, though, there was the threat of an active shooter. Someone posted on Instagram, holding a gun, in a bathroom at my school. They captioned this with something about taking risks and leaving a legacy. This kid had, I believe, been expelled, and otherwise fit the archetype of a school shooter. I was in math class, right before lunch, when the principal came on over the PA. This is a lockdown, she said. Please close your doors and windows. We all rolled our eyes. Drills are a major waste of time, and nobody wanted to deal with this. But then, she said something else. Something I hadn't ever heard in conjunction with this announcement. This is not a drill. Immediately, the entire room burst into action. Someone vaulted out of their chair and slammed the door shut. Someone else yanked down the curtains. My teacher grabbed his lacrosse stick and sat by the door, as we all crammed under the desks away from the door. It was silent. After the first flurry of movement, the entire class was quiet. And, remember, these were high school students, who can't shut up to save their lives. Well, apparently they could. And they did. For 45 minutes. Completely. Totally. Silent. That was what scared me the most, the silence. It takes a lot for 35 teenagers to be completely quiet for 45 seconds, let alone 45 minutes. I was terrified. I texted my mom, saying, I love you, not knowing if I'd ever see her again. I texted my friends, making sure they were okay, asking if they heard gunshots. Nobody had heard anything. And so we waited, afraid, silent, trembling. Hoping. After about an hour, the teacher gave us basic information. There was no active shooter, but the police were investigating to make sure. We sat that way for a good 2 hours, until we heard pounding at the door. I'm pretty sure we all got massive adrenaline boosts there. Lo and behold, however, it was the police. They were clearing classrooms, so we all stood up and turned the lights back on. My teacher started going over binomial expansion. It turned out later that it wasn't even a bathroom at the school. School bathrooms are out of a catalog, and the one in the picture was in a completely different city. It had been taken 2 weeks earlier. I was in my 5th period biology class. The door to my biology classroom was outside on the 2nd story, near a bridge that overlooked the senior patio, which was a large, outdoor place for students to eat lunch. It was lunchtime for half of the school, so we were able to hear the students talking and laughing. It was a gloomy day, very cloudy and windy. A thunderstorm was approaching, but it hadn't started raining yet. Suddenly, the talking and laughing from the lunch patio changed. We heard the students screaming loudly. My teacher looked out the window and she saw all of the students who were eating outside running into the second gym, which was right next to the lunch patio. Our teacher assumed there must have been a tornado, so she told us to get under our desks and cover our necks. A few seconds later, we heard the intercom turn on, a voice said, "Code Red," and the intercom hung up. Code Red means a lockdown at my school. My teacher had us all hiding in the corner, out of view of the windows. My teacher had to crawl on her stomach to lock the door, close the blinds, cover the window on the door, and turn off the lights. It was obvious this wasn't just a drill. Most of us were crying, we were terrified. When the school is under a code red, students aren't allowed to be on our phones, but some students in my class disobeyed that rule. They Googled what was going on. There was a news alert of there being an active shooter at a high school. Our high school. The school was very quiet, it was very eerie. You could hear a pin drop. About 15 minutes after we were put under a lockdown, we heard multiple helicopters flying over the school. All nearby police officers were told to come to the school. The road outside of the school was closed because parents were lining up around the gate surrounding the school crying for their children. After what seemed like hours of sitting in the silent classroom, our door was broken down, despite it being locked. Men ran in with large guns in their hands, the ones with lasers at the top. It was the SWAT team. My teacher wasn't wearing her school ID that day, so they pinned her to the ground and searched her. The SWAT team told all of my classmates to put our hands on our heads and to not move them. They made us get in a line, one SWAT member at the front of the line, one at the back. They said something along the lines of, "We're getting you guys out of here," and we all ran in a line through the halls as fast as we could, down the stairs, and out the main entrance. When we made it to the parking lot, there were tons of police officers and emergency personnel. Parents were still surrounding the gate. It turns out, there wasn't actually a shooter. A student at the middle school next door prank called 911 saying that there was a shooter in the cafeteria of my school. I was a 6th grader at a small elementary school when our school went into lockdown. At first, we thought it was just a drill, but then we heard the principal's voice over the intercom, urging us to lock the doors and stay quiet. I remember feeling confused and scared, wondering what could be happening outside. It wasn't long before we heard the sound of someone trying to force their way into our classroom. The teacher quickly grabbed a desk and barricaded the door while the rest of us huddled under our desks, trying not to make a sound. I remember feeling so small and vulnerable, wishing I could just disappear. For what felt like hours, we heard the intruder trying to break down the door and shouting angry, incoherent words. I couldn't understand what he was saying, but I knew that he was dangerous and that we were in grave danger. As the intruder continued to bang on our classroom door, I remember feeling my heart pounding in my chest, my breaths coming in short gasps. The sound of his voice was like nothing I had ever heard before, guttural and angry, and I remember feeling a sense of primal fear wash over me. My teacher did an amazing job of keeping us calm and quiet during those hours of uncertainty. She whispered reassurances to us, reminding us that we were safe and that help was on the way. We passed notes back and forth to each other, scribbling messages of hope and love. I remember feeling a sense of camaraderie with my classmates, all of us united in our fear. When the police finally arrived, we were ushered out of the classroom one by one, our hands held tightly by the officers. Outside, the school was a chaotic scene, with worried parents frantically trying to find their children and news crews swarming the area. It wasn't until much later that we learned the full extent of what had happened. The intruder had been a former employee at the school who had been terminated for his erratic and violent behavior. He had managed to enter the school grounds with a weapon, intent on harming those he felt had wronged him. Thankfully, no one was hurt that day, but the impact of the experience was profound. For weeks afterwards, I had trouble sleeping and would wake up in a cold sweat, reliving the sounds of the intruder trying to break down our classroom door. Even now, years later, I can still feel the chill of that day, the sense of terror that seemed to hang in the air. But I'm grateful for the experience, in a way. It taught me how strong and resilient I could be, and how much we rely on each other in times of crisis. It's something that I'll never forget, and that will always serve as a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of staying vigilant and prepared.